Today in this film form video we're going to be looking at continuity editing. Now, first thing to remember, films are not like plays. They're not performed from beginning to end in one go just in front of a camera. They're made in little bits. We call these bits takes. Now, they're made in little bits because, back in the days when all films were made on celluloid, on film, you could only put 10 minutes worth of film, it's about 1,000 feet, into a canister of film. So you couldn't have takes that lasted more than 10 minutes whether you wanted to or not. But it had more advantages than that. Shooting it in little bits is more efficient. You can have multiple setups of the camera, different camera angles, different shot types. You can, if you make a mess of things, you can do it again. You don't have to redo the entire performance again. It makes it quicker, easier, more efficient to make your films. It's also very rare for films to be shot in continuity order, or chronological order, if you will. So, let's, for the sake of argument, say you've got a film that is set in two locations, locations A and location B, right? It starts in location A, goes to location B, and then goes back to location A. Well, you're not going to film it like that. That'll make no sense at all. Instead, what you do is you film it, all the bits that are meant to be in location A, when you're in the same place. Right, so you make it out of order, and then you cut it up and you put it back into order later on. That is what editing is all about. So, each take might be shot with multiple cameras. Most films are shot on one camera. Television is more likely to be shot on multiple cameras, but film is shot on one camera usually, unless you're filming something especially complicated, like an action sequence of some kind, and you want to get as much variety as possible, but you can only shoot it once. Some filmmakers will shoot on a 2 or even 3 camera setup, but I think that's unusual. Most people prefer a 1 camera setup. But you shoot everything from a variety of different camera setups. So you want variety when it comes to editing. So this is called coverage. So normally you have a coverage ratio of about 4 to 1. That means that for every shot that you could have in your film, you've got 4 different options of which ones you could pick. Now, this doesn't include stuff that you've made a mess of, didn't work, that had problems, and you discarded because you didn't like it. This is 4 perfectly good options you could have picked. That means a 2-hour-long film is going to have at least 8 hours of film to choose from. Sometimes, like I think, Star Wars: The Phantom Menace shot 220 hours of film for a film that was about 2 hours long. So, editing is the process by which all this footage you've shot is shaped into a coherent whole, into a coherent film. Unwanted footage is cut out, it's discarded, and the remaining footage put into the necessary order to construct a narrative and manipulate spectator response. And editing is the absolute essence of cinema. What makes it a unique art form in a way that, say, theatre isn't? The fact that you can edit it, you can have close-ups and long shots and medium shots and insert shots and cutaways and all those other things that we get in films. But films didn't always have editing. In the very early days of films were very short. They might have lasted, one reeler was about 3 minutes. Right, so you'd have a 3-minute film that would be more like a play. It would get performed, usually in a long shot, in front of the camera as if it was on stage, because people didn't know any better. They hadn't invented editing. They wouldn't have thought you could move the camera or cut the film up and put it in a different order. But by the teens of the last century, things were starting to change. People started to experiment with editing, and continuity editing came into being. Continuity editing is the name that's given to the classical Hollywood style of editing. It's the standard language of cinema. Many people were pioneering this, but the real great pioneer of it was D.W. Griffith. He is one of the most important filmmakers of all time. He made some of the most important and greatest films of all time. This film, Birth of the Nation, is his most important film. It is, from today's standpoint, horrifyingly racist. I mean, this is a film where the Ku Klux Klan are the heroes and black people are the villains. It's very, very offensive by today's standards. It is also one of the biggest box office hits of all time. It was a massive, massive success in 1915. It was by far the most successful film of our year. And it invented the language of film that we take for granted today. To be fair, even in 1915, this film was seen as being horribly racist, and D. Gregory Griffiths set out to remedy that by making a film called Intolerance, which is about intolerance through the ages. But, you know, hindsight's 20/20 and all that. It's one of those films that deeply unpleasant and offensive, but so important to film history that, you know, if you are a serious cinephile, it's a film you should watch. Just be warned. Right. Now, according to David Bordwell and Kristin Thompson, whose books are Bibles of film studies, continuity editing is a system of cutting to maintain continuous and clear narrative action. Continuity editing relies upon matching scene direction, position, and temporal relationships from shot to shot. Remember, by temporal we mean time. So your film has to make sense both in terms of its temporal diegesis and its geographic diegesis. So it has to make sense in terms of time and place. Shots have to match from one shot to the next. That's what continuity is. Continuity errors are things that jump out at us. So, you know, famous example, for example, in Casablanca, where 1 minute Rick is soaking wet, the next minute he's bone dry again. Makes no sense. Distracts the audience, bursts the diegetic bubble. Now, the key of continuity editing is flow. Continuity editing is there to make your film flow. Its job is to direct the spectator's attention to where it needs to be without the spectator noticing. So the job of continuity editing is go, right, okay, look at this piece of information. Got that? Remember that? Right. Stop looking at that. Now look at this. Right, can you see this? Think about what you've just seen. What could the relationship between these two things be? Right, you got that? Good. Now, look at this. And that's what editing does. It's constantly drawing the audience's attention from one thing to another and telling you what to think and telling you what to feel. And all this is happening invisibly. You are not meant to notice it. You're not meant to be sat there going, oh, that's a nice cut. I love that transition, what they've done there. Oh, I wonder why they've done that camera movement. None of that is supposed to be going on. As a film student, it should be. That's the job of film studies. Film studies is to make you think about that kind of stuff. But what you've got to remember about film studies is that it's drawing attention to a language that you've been learning from the day you were born. No one sat you down and taught you how continuity editing works. You've just watched so many films and so many TV shows that it seeps into your brain and you understand it, just like you can understand the English language or whatever your, you know, main language is. You know, you learned it through osmosis, right? You just sort of like seeped into you. It's all part of what Peter Watkins calls the mass audiovisual media and the monoform. One standard form of language that creates meaning for the audience. We see it in film, we see it in television, we even see it in video games and comic books, anything that juxtaposes images together, quite frankly. There is a set standard language that everybody in the media uses and that everybody in the audience understands, and it, because it's invisible, because we don't think about it, we take it for granted, and we tend to believe everything we see and hear because this language is so powerful. So, what kind of things make up continuity editing? Well, as I said, long takes and short takes. Oners is another name for this. We've got continuity of shot, making sure that every shot follows another one in a way that makes sense. And the fact that it should be invisible. Well, how do we make it invisible? We use common standard techniques like action matches and matching on action. Two very different things with confusingly similar names. We use transitions, and then we use different kinds of shot types like establishing shots and master shots and insert shots and cutaway and parallel action and shot reverse shot structures and eyeline matches. We create ellipses. We have montage sequences. So these are the basic tools of continuity editing. So let's start with the idea of long and short takes. Well, what makes a shot long or short? Well, according to David Bordwell, the average length of a shot in a modern film is anywhere between 4 and 6 seconds. Right? 5 on average there, right? Because an average Hollywood blockbuster has anywhere between 1,250 and 3,000 shots in it. On average. Right? Some action sequences might have shots that change every 40 frames. Now, at 24 frames a second, which is the standard, frame rate for cinema, that's a new shot every 1.2 seconds. Very, very, very rapid editing. Right? And over the last 40 years, editing has been getting faster and faster and faster. A lot of this was down to the influence of the music video on MTV. In the 1980s, music videos on MTV were experimenting. I mean, music videos are very experimental back in the day. They had a lot. They were taking the conventions and tropes of art cinema and bringing it into the mainstream, and this in turn influenced mainstream cinema. And editing's got faster. I mean, if you go back and look at a film that was made in the 1970s, let's say Jaws, for example. Jaws is a masterpiece. It's a perfectly paced movie. But if you're a millennial that's used to Transformers movies and Marvel movies with rapid editing, you go back and watch Jaws and you might think it's glacial in its pace. Because it doesn't have anywhere near the amount of action and rapid editing we get in modern cinema. Which is a shame, because quite frankly, many modern movies are very, very poorly edited and paced. Anyway, 1.2 seconds, that's so fast we can barely take that in. But we've got so good at absorbing visual information very, very quickly in today's 21st century world that editing is getting a lot faster. If you took, an audience from 50 years ago and try to show them a modern film, they'd be lost. So, what makes something a long take, right? Well, any take is longer than average. Simple as that, right? As I said, back in the old days, you couldn't have a sequence that lasted more than 10 minutes without a cut, because you could only get 10 minutes of film into a camera, about 1,000 feet, like it says here, right? So you couldn't possibly have a shot that lasted longer than that. Hitchcock managed some that are about 10 minutes long. There are other films like there's an opening sequence from the beginning of The Player, there's about 8 minutes. There's the opening sequence of Touching Evil, and that's a very long take as well. You don't see them very often because they're difficult to do. They're time consuming, they're expensive. So usually it's people just showing off. So a long take is any shot that's longer than the ASL, the average shot length, right? So if the average shot length in your film is 5 seconds and you have a shot that's 10 seconds, that's a long take, right? But usually when we're talking long takes, we're talking things that last minutes without a cut, all right? Some films fake a lack of editing. So Hitchcock was doing this in Rope back in 1948. It's become quite trendy nowadays. We've had films like Birdman in 2014 and 1917 in 2019 that look like they were shot in one long continuous take, but they weren't. They fake it. They hide. They use clever techniques to hide the cuts. It's kind of cheating, really. And to be fair, in a film like 1917 with massive action sequences and battle scenes, that's kind of hard to do in one take. But that's not to say that films haven't been shot in one take without any cuts. Digital cameras have made this possible. There's a handful of films released largely at the beginning of the noughties when this kind of stuff first became possible. So you have films like Time Code back in 2000, which is a very arty film. This is Time Code, when you've got 4 parallel stories running on screen at the same time that all converge to one story at the end, and which one you should be following is dependent on whose audio is loudest. That's an utterly unique film. I've never seen anything like it before or since. Very interesting to watch. All shot handheld with consumer mini DV camcorders without any cuts. So when you think about it, that's 4 90-minute long single take movies running parallel. Incredible achievement. There was a really great film by Alexander Sokurov called Russian Ark, made in 2002, where the camera roams around the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. That is visually spectacular. How they pulled that off, I do not know. It took them 4 attempts to get it right. Something called PVC-1, which I've never seen before. And then there's this film from 2015 called Victoria. Both Victoria and Timecode are options for film studies. We could do that for experimental cinema. I think that was in the foreign cinema section. Both great films, highly recommend. So seek them out of time because it's very hard to get hold of. I'll be surprised you can find that. Some directors are well known for doing long takes. Steven Spielberg apparently quite well known for his long takes, which in the industry tend to be called oners, as in done in one shot. They are oners. Anyway, they're fairly rare, although long takes and shots that last, minutes are becoming very trendy in television at the moment. Continuity. Now, continuity editing is not just a name for the editing system, it's a way of making things flow, like we said. So, continuity is the process of ensuring that all the shots in a film match the shots around them. There's not going to be anything that jars you and sort of like makes you realise you're watching a movie. As I said, films are not shot in order, and scenes that may be meant to be edited together could have been shot months apart. So it's important to ensure that all the elements of the mise-en-scène, the framing, the movement and everything match one another. So you'll have continuity experts on set recording everything, taking digital, like thousands of digital photographs, making notes, and they'll be like saying to the actors, right, okay, last time we filmed this, you were holding that glass in your left hand. Things like that, right? So that's the basics of continuity. As I said, continuity errors can be very jarring. They can burst the diegetic bubble. So, what are some of the elements of continuity editing that ensure this continuity? Well, there are a couple of rules. There's the 180-degree rule, the 70-degree rule. You've also then got to make sure there's continuity in screen direction. And to make sure that you hide the cuts, you can use things like action matches and matching on action. There's also sound bridges are used to hide the editing, but we'll do that when we do sound. So, what is the 180-degree rule, or the axis? Right, okay. 180-degree rule is a rule where you draw an imaginary line, the line of action, or the axis, through your scene. Right? The rule says the camera must always stay on the same side of the line. It shouldn't cross it. That prevents subjects from switching sides of the screen. That can confuse the audience. This is increasingly being broken in modern films. It's not as hard and fast a rule as it used to be. Kind of annoys me. But let's assume this is a simple shot, reverse shot structure you're filming here. Camera position A, you film the entire scene as a master shot. And that's what you can see. Blue woman on the left, red woman on the right. We then move up the camera to camera position B, and we do this over the shoulder shot. As we can see here, because the camera stays on the same side of the line, blue woman is on the left, red woman's on the right. We then stay on the right side of the line, we move to camera position C to do the reverse over the shoulder shot. Blue woman on the left, red woman on the right. But if we were to move the camera to position D, the red woman's on the left, the blue woman's on the right. They switch sides of the screen. This can be confusing. Now, in a simple shot reverse shot structure like this, that's not really going to confuse the audience too much. They can deal with that. But imagine if this was a chase sequence. Imagine if blue woman was being pursued by red woman and they were running off in this direction. If they were running from screen right to screen left in that shot, and that shot, and then suddenly you cross the 180-degree line, they'd be looking, they were like running in the opposite direction in that shot. That would be confusing. So, don't cross the 180-degree rule line, the axis. There's also a 70-degree rule. This basically says that if you're going to change your camera angle from, say, level to low, or level to high, or high to low, or even if it's on a lateral plane, you know, in something like an interview, for example, you should change your camera angle by more than 70%. If you do it by less than 70%, the two shots will look too similar and it will look like a mistake or a deliberate jump cut. Useful one to do when you're doing interviews for that one. Then we've got screen direction and action matching. Right. You want to have continuity of screen direction and continuity of movement. The direction of movement of a subject or a camera movement in shot A should be matched by shot B, and that's called an action match because the actions match, obviously, right? Difficult to explain this without being able to show it to you, frankly, but when we're in class, I'll show you some examples. Either way, think about it. If a person's walking from screen right to screen left, and they go to a door, and they open the door, and you cut to the reverse shot to see them coming through the door, then they should be going from screen right to screen left in that shot as well. Right? That's continuity of screen direction. That's action matching. But remember, we want to be hiding the cuts. To hide the cuts when you're doing an action match, you use a match on action. This is very confusing because the two things often go together. You always have an match on action when you're doing an action match, right? Well, that basically what a match on action does is you put your cut where things are moving, because the movement helps to distract the audience away from the cut and it helps to hide it. So, if you saw somebody walking up to a door, they open the door, then you cut and they walk through it, the audience will notice the cut. But if you have them walk up to the door, half open it, and then from the reverse shot see it open the rest of the way, then the opening of the door helps to hide the cut. So a match on action often includes an action match. And an action match often includes a match on action. Now, how do we get from one shot to the other? Well, this is where transitions come in. A transition is how you literally get from one shot to another. The most common one is the cut. You cut. Now, it's called cut because back in the days of editing on film would run through a little gate with a guillotine on it, with a razor blade, and you would literally cut the film up into bits, throw out the bits you don't want, and what you left, you put it back in the right order, and you glue it all back into the right order. Right? So you were literally cutting the film, and that's why it's called a cut. You cut out the stuff you don't want. They're the most common. Why? Because they're instantaneous and the audience doesn't really notice them, unless you want them to notice them. So what kind of transitions have we got? Well, we've got the cut. Then we've got the dissolve, which is also called crossfade in video editing. You've got the wipe, which comes in all sorts of different varieties. You've got fades. And you can have all sorts of really nasty special effects transitions that are best left alone, quite frankly. So, as I said, cuts are the most common because they're instantaneous, and as a result, they're the least noticeable for the audience. Now, we've also got the dissolve or the crossfade. This is where one image fades away whilst another one fades in. So one shot gradually replaces the other. So at the point they're both on screen at the same time, as we can see from this shot here. It's dissolved from a shot of the sheet of paper to a photograph of Colonel Kurtz. And halfway through the transition, we can see both on screen at the same time. Now, one of the things that editing does is it can create an ellipsis. That's like ... in English, right? An ellipsis is where you cut out stuff you don't want the audience, or the audience doesn't need to see, right? So, for example, if in my story somebody was going to get on a plane on Heathrow, fly to New York and get off at JFK, I don't need to see them sit on an aeroplane for 8 hours, do I? Cut that out. All I've got to do is see them get on a plane in Heathrow, get off in New York. That's an ellipsis, right? So editing can cut out stuff we don't need to see. All transitions can do this, but dissolves are quite often specifically used to connote an ellipsis. They can cut out time, and they can often be used to show a change of location as well. This can also be done with wipes, where one shot wipes the other one off the screen. Like dissolves, wipes can be used to cut out timers and ellipsis, and again they connote the change of location. Wipes are more noticeable than dissolves. We're more likely to notice a wipe than a dissolve. So they're kind of really more suitable to non-continuity editing, really. But frankly, I think they're nasty and best avoided. But some films have used them with great effect. Star Wars, for example, the Star Wars movies are very famous for their wipes, specifically because George Lucas wanted his film to look like an early 1920s, 1930s serial. What's in like a serialized story, not like a breakfast cereal. So he was deliberately using outdated, outmoded techniques. Then we got the fade. Fade in, fade out. Usually from fading from black to full translucency, or the opposite, fading out. Fades ins and fades outs are like a full stop and a capital letter at the beginning and end of a sentence. They're punctuation. They mark the beginnings and ends of things. So it could be the beginning of the film, the end of the film, the beginning of a scene, the end of a scene. They can also connote a change of time and place. They might show a transition from a character from one state to another, like sleep to wake, conscious to unconscious, things like that. So all transitions can be used to show a change of time and place, but dissolves are specifically used for it. Fades mark the beginning and end of things, usually. Alright, let's have a look at some shot types. First thing, you start a scene off. What's the first thing the audience needs to know? Where am I? What's going on? Establishing shots do this. Establishing shots are nearly always some kind of wide shot, usually an extreme long shot, or a long shot that shows the location. Sometimes you will use iconographic buildings, or in this case the Golden Gate Bridge. The Golden Gate Bridge is very unique. We instantly know we're in San Francisco. Is this the Presidio? I think it's called. Yeah. Anyway, that's Golden Gate Bridge. We know we are. Again, we know it's winter. Why do we know it's winter? Because it's got winter written on it. On-screen graphics are giving this information, right? It's called La La Land for a start, so we know we're in Los Angeles because LA, right? Hence La La. Get it? Plus La La Land, something's La La. It's insane. It's mad, and something people might say about Los Angeles in the same way Gotham is a nickname for New York, because Gotham also implies insanity. It is an insane place. It's like Gotham. Right. Again, long shots. Establishing shots often taken from the air. Helicopter and drone shots are a common way to do establishing shots. A classic, as I said, is an aerial tracking shot with a camera looking down at the ground before tilting up to show where we're going, to show the skyline of some city, for example. Master shots. Now, as I was saying about coverage, when you're shooting a sequence, you're going to do it in a variety of different camera angles and shot types, right? Let's assume we're doing a simple shot reverse shot structure, right? We're going to do two people talking. You film the conversation as a wide shot. A two shot in this case, right? You do the entire conversation as a master shot, right? That's your foundation, that's your basis, your safety shot. Whatever else you do, you've got that, right? They play out the entire scene, beginning to end, in a medium shot or a long shot. That's your safety, right? Then you will do it again and again and again with different camera setups. You'll do close-ups, you'll do medium close-ups, you'll do, over-the-shoulder shots, you'll do insert shots. So you've got coverage, you've got variety. The editor will then take all this material and edit it together in the way that works best. So, if we look at this sequence from Vertigo, right, establishing shot, right, this will have been shot, might not have been shot by the main crew, that might have been done by a second unit. So second unit director would have gone off with a second unit. and possibly a pair of doubles. I mean, there's no guarantee that this is actually Kim Novak and Jimmy Stewart. They could just be their body doubles, can't see their face. It could be anybody, right? They go off and film that, right? But this is your establishing shot. You've got that in the back, right? In the studio, Hitchcock and the key actors are filming the conversation. So, first of all, they do the entire sequence in a master shot, right? Then they will film it again from different camera angles, like this over-the-shoulder point of view shot. And they'll do a reverse shot from Madeline's point of view, right? And they'll do medium close-ups and close-ups and all this kind of stuff as well, and they'll re-edit it in whatever order you want, right? And then you'll come back to the master shot later. So master shots. I mean, sometimes you get interesting stories, like, for example, if you see Saturday Night Fever, originally the dance sequences, they shot a master shot and then they were going to do lots of close-ups and insert shots and all this kind of stuff. But they decided not to bother. They just did all the dance sequences as masters, because then you could see John Travolta really strutting his stuff and you could see how impressive it was. This can be quite true of action movies as well. I mean, some of the best action movies are the ones that are shot in masters and don't do lots of close-ups and shaky camera work and all this kind of stuff. You know, you look at the films of someone like Jackie Chan, for example, and they're mostly done in master shots so that we can see him do his stuff. We can see how great he is. If you have to chop it up and edit it really fast, it's usually because the people who you're filming can't fight. Now, we also have insert shots. Insert shots don't show detail, right? They have their close-ups and we can see things, right, in detail. Now, it could be writing on a piece of paper or a computer screen. It could be, you know, what's the time? Oh, look, it's 8 o'clock, right? Well, 3 minutes past 8, technically. On this beautiful Amiga constellation he's got here. Vintage watch. But anyway, like close-ups, this shows detail. Usually, this might be intercut with a close-up of someone's face, then a close-up of that, then back to a reaction shot. Then we've got cutaways and parallel action. They're for showing two things happening at once. They can be flashbacks, flash forwards, things like that. So cutaways are shot inserted into a scene to show parallel action at another location or to illustrate what a character's talking about. And they're usually used to make exposition scenes more interesting. So, stories we tell, if the entire thing was just a talking head of someone, you know, talking to the camera, that'd get boring. So we do cutaways to see what he's talking about. So here he is talking about how great his relationship with his daughter was. Well, that's not some evidence. Here's some footage of him having a great time with his daughter. Reaction shot to see how it makes him feel. So they're good for making exposition scenes more interesting. The classic, of course, is if you've got like, if you've seen Knives Out, for example, or any of these sort of like detective sort of like whodunits. The classic thing in that is at the end they all gather together in the parlour and, you know, Miss Marple or Poirot or whoever it is explains to everybody who did the murder, and we cut away to see them doing it. Makes it more interesting. As I said, reaction shots. Reaction shots are kind of cutaway. In TV, they're often called noddies because there's someone just nodding, right? So reaction shots are kind of cutaway. It's used to show a character's reaction to something, hence the name. So during a conversation where character A is talking, the shot might cut the character B's reaction to see what character A is saying. So we've got characters A, B, and C. Character A is talking, we see character B's reaction, we see character C's reaction, we cut back to character A to see what they're saying. These two are the reaction shots, because they're reacting to him. Now for the most fundamental part of continuity editing. Shot reverse shot structures. Shot reverse shot structures are the fundamental element of continuity editing. Nearly all films are basically a string of shot reverse shot structures, right? So the point of shot reverse shot structure is to juxtapose images, either to create a link between them or to create contrasts, binary opposites, right? So they link subjects in conversation. Person A talking to person B. Gunfights. Person A shooting at person B. Person B shooting back. Chases. Person A chasing person B. Right? There's also a kind of shot reverse shot structure called an eyeline match, which shows you what people are looking at. Okay? So, shot reverse shot structures, as I said, are the foundations of continuity editing, and they're very important. They follow the 180-degree rule, otherwise they will stop making sense. So, look at this, same sequence from Vertigo, right? We've had our establishing shot, right? Down here, this is our master, right? They'll have done the entire conversation in this master shot. Probably first. We've then got a medium shot of Scotty. Over the shoulder, 3/4 shot looking at Madeline. So that's 2 shots we've got. We've then got this medium shot of Madeline. So that's our 3rd shot. And of course our master. So we've got, in just this little bit of screen grabbed here, at least 4 different shot types, not including the establishing shot we saw before and the other master we saw before. That's 6, right? So there's at least 6 different shots in the sequence, but all of these ones would have been shot in one go, all of those ones would have been shot in one go, and all of these ones as well. Now remember, in these ones, Madeline doesn't actually need to be there for Scotty's part. As I said, she could have gone off and had a cup of tea somewhere while he was doing this. Right? Same with this one. Yeah? Jimmy Stewart, you know, off shooting something else while they do this. She's just having lines read to her by some script supervisor or something. But, you know, Scotty speaks. We cut over the shoulder shot of Madeline. Notice the camera angles. High angle looking down at him, low angle looking up at her because she stood up higher than he is. So, shot, reverse shot, shot, reverse shot, shot, reverse shot, shot, reverse shot, shot, yeah, new shot, new reverse shot basically, master, right? You could have shot the entire sequence in that shot, but without all these other ones you'd have lacked variety, it would have been boring. Shot reverse shot structure also excellent for creating binary opposites. Claude Levi Strauss. Right? Hero, villain, man, woman, protagonist, antagonist, cop, criminal, whatever you want. So look at how this is working here. Master shot. Yeah? Shot, reverse shot, shot, reverse shot, shot, reverse shot. Again, notice the eye lines. He's higher up, she's lower down, so we've got a low angle shot looking down on her. Notice how this helps to make her look small and weak and him powerful and dominant. Notice how it's also creating binary opposites in the use of colour between the green and the red. Notice that he's not talking here and she is. That makes that reaction shot. Again, eyeline matches. Eyeline matches show us what people are looking at. Right? You'll see a shot of someone's face. They're clearly looking at something. We cut. We see a shot, or we assume, because of that cut, that that is what they're looking at. We then think, oh, how does that make them feel? Reverse shot to see what this reaction shot. Okay? So, establishing shots for establishing a location inside this art gallery, right? Here. Right, we keep coming back to this. It's almost like a master shot. So we see the location. We can see the relationship between Madeline and the painting of Carlotta. You see, you can clearly see he's looking. What's he looking at? We cut. Yeah? We see the flowers on the bench. The camera then tilts up to the painting. We see the flowers on the painting. We cut to a close-up of the flowers on the painting. Here we're emphasizing. We get a reaction. Oh, he's looking. He's noticed something. That's the same as the flowers she was throwing in the bay in the earlier shot. There's a realization on his face. He's looking. What's he looking at? Oh, the bun in her hair. then the camera tracks in on it, pushes in on it. It gets closer and closer and closer for emphasis. And then the camera tilts up to the painting and pushes in and pushes in and pushes in to emphasize the same banner here. And then it cuts through his reaction shot and it goes back to that shot again for even further emphasis. All of that is providing us enormous amounts of information and not a single piece of dialogue used. Everywhere. Look, it's going. Where are we? Oh, yeah. Oh, where's Madeline? Oh, there she is. What's she doing? She's looking at a painting. All right, okay. Oh, he's noticed something. What's he looking at? Oh, right, yeah. Yeah. Let's go and look at this. Look at this. Can you see that? Right. Now, remember. Right, look. See? That's a juxtaposition, right? What am I supposed to be looking at? Oh, yeah, right, yeah. Flowers. Okay. Oh, yeah, you noticed that. Yeah, okay. What else are you looking at now? Oh, her hair, right? Oh, yeah, her hair. Oh, look at that. Okay. Why is that significant? Looking. Oh, look, yeah, it's her hair too. Oh, he's had a realization now. Brilliant piece of editing. As you said, cuts out things we don't need to see. It's an ellipsis, or ellipses in plural. One of the key roles of editing is cut out things the audience doesn't need to see. It compresses time. It's known as an ellipsis, right? Look, they're in the graveyard. Dissolves. Now he's in a car, right? Don't need to see him leave the graveyard, get in his car, park it up and drive it off, do we? Then we've got the montage sequence. Technically a kind of non-continuity editing, but so common that it's become part of continuity editing. A montage sequence consists of a series of juxtaposed shots that all combine to create an overall meaning or to compress time. So they are often used to compress time and show progress, like in a training sequence, in a makeover sequence, to show preparation, to illustrate a journey, something like that. Think about the montage sequence from Rocky, for example. It's months and months and months of training compressed into a couple of seconds as we see him, punch a couple of bits of beef and run up some steps. Right? Think about your classic teen movies. The lead girl goes from ugly duckling to swan. Right? She has her hair done, she has her nails done, she puts on a new dress, she takes off her glasses, she lets her hair down, and suddenly the geeks become the princess. Right? All done to some jaunty pop song of the day. Right? The surreal dream sequence from Vertigo. Right? Bizarre use of colour. Strange animation sequences. Shots from the film, each one giving us a little bit of information. Bizarre. I love this image. So bizarre. Right? Him floating on this strange background. And this. Anyone seen Mad Men? Yeah? Opening sequence of Mad Men rips that off, doesn't it? Yeah? He's falling, wakes up in a shock and horror. Right? Bizarre, surreal images. Each of these images don't make sense on their own. Each one of these shots has no inherent meaning in isolation. It's only in the juxtaposition of these images together that creates meaning. Right, so that's continuity editing, basically. It's the most important thing, really, in film studies, right? If you've got any questions, you know where I am. Next up is non-continuity editing and montage, which is the art house, more European style of doing things. See you in the next one.